All right, so morning, everybody. See some waving, hello. For today's lesson, I've got my headphones on. I'm gonna be using them a bunch because we're doing spatial audio for today. I know that we've said this term spatial audio a couple of times throughout EPIQ. What is spatial audio exactly? Before we actually get into the meat of this, can someone just tell me what that concept is? Because we've been playing audio, like we play music in our game, but what's the difference between audio and spatial audio?
Spatial audio is to put your different types of audios in different fields. For example, you might put one in the center, you might put one on the left, or one on the right, one in front of you, and one up and one backwards. So, like for example, you may put a bird flying up. You may put the wind blowing all around you, left, right, and center, and so forth and so forth. So it's kind of to provide space for all your audio events.
Right, so that's basically the gist of it. Spatial audio is audio that you have positions to it. It lives in certain spaces that, because of how the audio is relayed to you, either through headphones or if you have like a surround sound speaker system, you don't just get audio from all of your speakers, you get it from specific directions. It gives you directionality for the audio in the same way that if I go and I walk down the street and there's a bird in a tree that's like up in the distance up ahead, I can sort of tell that it's coming from ahead of me as opposed to behind me. And if it's on my left side, I can hear it from the left ear more than I hear it from the right ear. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by sharing my screen, make sure I'm sharing audio. And once again, I have the same project that we've been working in that the last couple of sessions were done in. And is the Zoom size on this all right? I actually remember to increase my Zoom level before I started this time. Anyone read that? It's good. All right. So as for the audio we're actually going to use, you can use whatever audio you have. You may also use the audio that I gave in that zip folder that I put in earlier. If you use different audio, you might get slightly different results from me at certain points. We'll explain why that is as we get going. But for the starting point, let's actually place something into our game. I have my audio here, but the first step is to actually put it into our scene. As we've seen in our program, we're capable of making audio in the code and loading it that way. But since we have the scene editor, we could instead go to our scene. I've just opened up my scene, and you can see that once again, I have the 3D environment here. I have my player character. I have the smithy off to the left side. I have the barrels off on the right, and then some stuff in the background, this sort of castle laden with sci-fi turrets and a ship flying overhead. If I wanted to add something auditory to the scene, I can do so by going into the palette, and I'm going to expand custom 3D in the palette. Sorry, basic 3D in the palette. And one of the icons here is this circle with the speaker icon in it. And this is our audio 3D object. So if I press enter, in the scene, I now have, I am beginning to place this audio 3D object. And we can see in the scene that there is this cube that has the same speaker icon on it.
What's the object called?
The object is called Audio 3D. It's in the palette under Basic 3D.
Okay.
In the scene, I can see that I have this cube that I'm moving around. The first thing is, what's up with this cube? If I'm placing audio, why did we give you a graphic to go along with it?
Is that the direction it'll be coming from? Or its source?
That is the source of the audio. So it's going to be coming from this position. But most of the time when you have audio in a game, you don't usually want just like a box with speaker icons on it, right? You want, the audio comes from somewhere, but usually you don't see like an object that represents it in space, right? So why is that we have it in the scene?
You need to put it on an object, right? Because the cube itself may not have any sound, but it has to sort of be connected to, let's say, a cliff, and I want a banging sound. So then I want that cube on top of the cliff.
Sure. In most cases, you would expect that, yeah, usually sounds don't just kind of come from nowhere for the most part. Stuff like the background music is sort of sourceless. But for spatial audio, you usually expect it has some kind of source associated with it.
Is it
So
related to scene notes? Because in I read a lot about game programming, and you create notes in the scenes that produce sound. So is it related to that scene notes? Nodes, Nodes.
NODE. Oh, as far as this audio 3D object is concerned, we're not going to be like attaching this onto something. We are just giving it a position in space.
Okay.
Basically, the gist of what I'm getting at is even though we see this cube here, the big thing is this is just to make it so that when you are editing the scene, you can see where that is. You can go, you can find it, you can click on it. If you're using your sights to visually scan the scene, you can see where the sounds are. You can go and you can find it and manipulate it. But when we run the game, this box won't be there. This is just a placeholder that makes it easier to see things in the editor.
Right, understood.
I think it'll also make it easier to position the audio or yourself with respect to the audio. But I now have a question.
Yes.
Which is, why did you not simply add a browse dialog to the properties box for each object and say something like associated sound instead of making this? I mean, this is also useful, but won't it be easier, just having a properties box as an object?
The long story short of it is we could have done that, and we probably will end up doing that at some point, and we have not done it yet. That's basically the gist of it. You do need to be able to place audio sort of independently for certain kinds of things. I might reasonably want to have an audio source that is the ambiance of something coming from the distance, like bird chirps or whatnot. They don't necessarily have an exact object that they're associated with, but for cases where I do have them, you can still sort of mirror that by just placing the audio on top of another thing. So when it came down to what gets done first, we have the independent thing first. But you are right that it would make sense for a lot of objects to have associated sounds that we could put on it. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yep, I'm just thinking of bouncy audio cubes with collision events, but that's just me.
This audio 3D object doesn't have, at least in the dialogue. Let's talk about what's in the properties here. One of the things that is not in the properties for the audio 3D is there are no physics settings in this properties dialogue. So could I have physics on this if I wanted to?
You'd have to program it in using code?
Right. You could do it if you really wanted to by using code. We considered that most of the time you probably don't want physics on your audio 3D. So in order to make the properties list shorter and only show you the things that we consider to be particularly relevant, they're not in the properties there. If you still really want to, you can by putting it on in your code, but when you're placing it in your scene, it's just physics-less in the properties.
Just to be clear too, I mean, just because we say that's what we thought will be built the first version, it doesn't mean that that's the way it has to be.
Yep.
It just means that's what we were thinking when we built it. Oh, just on this same note, as I have headphones on now, the Quorum Studio itself will be going open source finally in the relatively near future. So even though right now there's nothing you can do about this, once it goes open source, you can also modify it yourself, because all of Quorum Studio for the most part is just Quorum code. So if you want something additional inside of a particular dialogue or inside of a particular IDE feature or whatever it is that you want, you can go ahead and hack on it yourself, put in a pull request, and then you're good to go. You can have whatever feature that you can dream up. So anyway.
Right, where was I? Oh, so let's look at, you're all good. I am easily distracted at times. So in my scene, I have my audio 3D, and so let's discuss the things that are in the properties dialog real quick. We have some things that are obvious and should be familiar by now. The very first thing in here is a name. This is for the audio 3D. In the same way that we might care about knowing other things by their name, like the player, we might reasonably want to know the position or the name of this audio 3D so that we can get it in code later. The next field I have here is I have a field called source, and there's a little icon of a folder next to it. What is this, do you guys think?
That's where it is.
That's where you go to get the sound resource that you want.
Right. So
file preferably.
Yep. This is the source file. This is the audio file that we're using. And this little folder button, I can click on this button or activate this button, and this will allow me to find the file that I want in a file browser. And so right now I'm going into my resources and I'm going to pick scotlandbirds.og. I click open and it's been put into the field for me. So now I have selected the audio that will be played with this audio 3D. Besides that, I also have fields for its position. This is just like positioning the models in the scene. This is X, Y, and Z coordinates in 3D space. I have volume, which is how loud or quiet the sound is. It ranges between 0 and 1, similar to a bunch of other things in the engine. I also have pitch, which is also, right now it's set at 1.0. As a question, with a bunch of these things, I say that they're between 1 and 0, but what if I wanted to make this thing louder than it normally would be, or I wanted it to be higher pitched? What happens if I set it above 1.0? Is that okay?
I think you'll just rescale it down to 1.0 if it's higher.
So the reason I ask this is because with most of the things that we have this sort of 0 to 1 sort of boundary on, that is true. With this one, 1 is basically just the starting point. And you actually can amplify things up by increasing volume or pitch them up by increasing it above 1. So if you wanted something to be really high pitched, you could increase the pitch to like 2.0, and that would be very high pitch. And also, due to how we handle pitch, it'll also become much faster. If you want to take your recorded dialogue that you end up doing later, and then you want your character to sound like a squirrel that is currently hyped up on caffeine, you can set your pitch real high and you'll get that effect. Besides that, we have a few things down here under the section called advanced properties. And the first is max volume distance. What is the max volume distance?
I'll hazard a guess that it would be the threshold where you don't hear the sound and then you do hear the sound.
Ah, that's really close, but not exactly. The max volume distance is the threshold at which you hear the volume at its maximum, so it's as loud as it can be. And once you get past that distance, it starts to get quieter as you get farther away from it. So it's not the distance where it becomes, you know, hearable versus not hearable. It's the distance, it's the threshold between when it's full volume and it starts to get quiet due to distance attenuation or drop off because you're far away from the sound. This is useful for certain kinds of sounds where if you have, you know, I have a squirrel that's like in a bush somewhere and it's making like a chittering sound, that you probably have to be fairly close to hear that. A gas station like explodes in a big fireball because the action hero just like drove their Pinto in it while like shooting all their machine guns and stuff, and like pulpy action movie style, you're probably going to hear the big explosion from farther away. So you could set that max distance or that max volume distance to be a lot higher to indicate how far away you get the maximum volume from. Related to that is our next field here, the roll-off distance. What is the roll-off distance? Or sorry, the roll-off rate. What is the roll-off rate?
The rate at which the volume fades after the max distance?
Yep, that's right. So if I want something to fade off only gradually as you get farther away, so, you know, for example, this might be that giant explosion again, I would set this value to be lower. The lower the value is, the slower it will fade with distance. If I want it to fade off really sharply, so you only hear something when you get really close to it, then you want to set this value up. And like all of the other values we've just been talking about here, it starts at 1, and then you can get it down to 0 or you can go up higher. All right, past that, we have 3 different checkboxes. The first is play on load. What does play on load do?
Assume it would start playing as soon as the game is loaded.
That's right. As soon as the scene is loaded into your game, that audio will start playing immediately. The next checkbox is looping. This one, sort of explanatory, it loops the audio. So if you turn this on, once the audio starts, it will just keep going over and over and over and over until the until you stop it in code or that sound gets removed from the game somehow. And yes, that distance values, all of these values are in, or the max volume distance in particular is in meters. The roll-off rate is calculated in a way that doesn't translate quite as well. And I forget exactly how the math works, but it will fall off fairly steeply with the default value. And for the properties that are here, we have one final checkbox, and we have Doppler. This is checked by default, unlike the other two, which are off by default. What is Doppler?
That's the idea that it gets louder as you get closer,
And the reverse.
yeah, thank you.
And
Actually, no.
I
it
haven't
has to
had
do
enough
with-
coffee yet today.
higher
It
and
has to
lower
do with the
pitches.
motion towards or away from a sound source. As you move closer, the pitch will go up. As you move away, the pitch goes down. Same as when we shift light from red to blue, depending on what direction we're moving towards a light source.
That's right. The Doppler effect is something that's not just a name that we made up. It's not a computer science term. The Doppler effect is something in science broadly, and it's basically what Tim was saying. As objects are moving, it shifts their pitch of the sound as they reach your ears. So basically what this means is a train that is passing by you, it's coming from ahead of you, and then it moves past you. As it approaches, the pitch of it is higher, and then it gets lower as it goes past you. Basically, this toggle just says, do you want to simulate the Doppler effect or not? This can be useful for certain kinds of things. If I want realistic audio for things that are moving around, this can give me a sense that things are moving as my audio source moves. Certain kinds of things you probably don't want this for. If you were doing something that was perhaps music or dialogue, something that you really want to hear clearly, you probably don't want that to start pitch shifting up and down if the source starts moving. So you have the option to turn it off. By default, it's on to simulate realistic Doppler effect conditions. So,
is that Doppler effect depends on the speed of the object moving?
yes, it depends on the speed of the object, and the speed of the listener will impact that as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, William, you
Yes.
said the word squirrel. Does anybody have a squirrel file I can add? I now want to put squirrels in trees, and I don't want to go look for
I
them.
have it on good authority that free sound is the
Yeah, I know. That's where I get all my
eminent source
sounds.
for free audio files. I don't know.
I was
I am not
hoping
endorsed
you
by
already
free. I
had
am not.
one.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I don't. What I do have right now is I have a clip I found of ambient audio of birds in Scotland. So I'm going to place that into my scene here. And for right now, I am going to escape from my properties, and I'm still positioning my audio 3D. If at some point you accidentally escape twice or something, or you moved off of it, you might need to just get the audio 3D back from the palette so you can place it. Right now, I'm going to take my 3D audio and I'm going to place it directly to the left of my player character. So I am placing it, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tiles directly to the left of my character. I'm going to press enter to place it. And I now have my 3D audio in the game. Once again, there is a cube on the screen in the scene, but that will not be there when we actually run our game. And to show that, let me actually run the game. I have my happy fun music going here, funshine.on. I do not see any cube in the game. I also don't hear any birds chirping. What's up with that? I just placed my 3D audio in the scene.
You're not close enough.
I'm not close enough. Were there other suggestions?
Did you not check the play box?
Right. So, as was said, I didn't start it and I didn't check that on Playbox. So right now, the Audio 3D exists in the game, but nothing is actually playing it yet. To change that, let me go back into my scene. I'm going to select all of the floor first because I'm too close to them. And then I'm going to select my Audio 3D by finally tabbing to it. I am going to change this so that play on load is selected and say that's true. I'm also going to select the looping box For ambience, it makes sense that you might want it to continue forever. The birds don't chirp for exactly 2 minutes and 32 seconds and then just all vanish suddenly, right? They are a little bit more continuous than that. So I have set those two fields. I'm going to run this again. And now I hear my audio. If I'm sharing my audio correctly on the stream, you guys should be able to hear it as well. I should have my game going along with somewhat loud ambience. My background music is actually getting drowned out just a little bit here.
Yeah, which is interesting.
So there's a couple of things that I think that are interesting here. One is that this audio is a little bit ways away from me. It is 6 units, and it's still fairly loud. And also, I am currently hearing it through both ears, which is exactly not the point of the 3D audio, right? And in my game, if I start moving my character around, well, nothing changes when I move my character around. Basically, the audio 3D doesn't actually seem like it's doing the spatial part of spatial audio right now. So does anyone have an idea why that might be?
You haven't connected it to an object. I mean, nothing is happening. You have to move this object with the character or whatever else. Right now, it's just sitting there.
So that is one of the issues that we're going to have to contend with. Yeah, because it's placed in the scene, it does have a position in space that is positioned away from the origin of the game. So if my audio, like my ears, starts positioned at 000, which is how the engine is set up, by default, your ears are positioned at 000. It does not place at 000. It's somewhere else. So I should expect that the sound will be coming from the left. It arrives because the sound is to the left of the origin. I hear it through my left ear predominantly. That's what I would expect.
Is the source audio stereo, mono? Does that affect?
Yes, and this is super esoteric. There's no good reason why you should know this unless you've already worked with the system before, but I wanted to highlight it because it's really easy to accidentally do this. With the spatial audio system, with the positional audio, it decides how to take a sound and translate it to the channels of your speakers or your headphones. The sound that I'm using right now is stereo. It already has multiple channels which are designed to determine how it goes to your multiple channels. So the spatial audio doesn't have anything to work with. The work has already been done. It can't do anything with it from here. The spatial audio system only works with mono sounds, which is basically just sounds that only have one channel, or they're not designed to play differently through different speakers. If you've never worked with audio before, this distinction might seem entirely pointless, or it doesn't seem like the sort of thing that you should need to know, but it's important because the computer, as we have it set up with the Quorum audio engine right now, is not able to work with those kinds of files. If I go and I look at my files, I'm gonna.
Isn't that true even for places like nightclubs where you have mono playing? Because for positioning audio, you need, if you have stereo, then it's already positioned, right? You don't really have any control on positioning.
That's close, although nightclubs is where you go to get mono, not actually where you use mono sounds. So that's very close.
Yeah, my mono file worked exactly as it should, so I'm happy.
All right. And so one of the things I wanted to do was I want to, I'm in my Windows Explorer right now, and I'm going to find scotlandbirds.org. If I right click on it and go to properties, that's not the thing I'm supposed to look under, scotlandbirds.org properties. And if I go look under details, we can see that Windows is telling me that this particular audio file has 2 channels. It is stereo, which means that it is not going to work correctly for our positional audio. I have a different file here, which I'm going to use instead, which is shimmer.wav. If I look at details on this one actually doesn't say anything under the audio section. So is this mono or is it stereo? Or is it something else?
I'd love to say something else. Maybe it's 7.1, but try. It might be mono.
The big thing here is that this one is mono, but there's no way you could know that from the properties, because the important thing is when this file got made, someone was responsible for making this audio file, right? And they used some software somewhere to record it. And when they did that, they saved certain kinds of information in the file to be easily accessible to the system. But they didn't put that particular thing in. So sometimes you'll just get audio files that the system just doesn't tell you if they're mono, stereo, or something else. You can figure that out in other ways. For example, I have Audacity on my system, so I could open this with Audacity. If I do that, I just pop open Audacity here. I can see that if you know Audacity's interface, which there's absolutely no reason to expect that you should, that's not a requirement to take this class or to take this session or to work with Quorum or any of that. But I am looking at this and it is a mono file, so I know it'll work. You might have to use other tools in order to figure that out. Audacity is convenient because if you know what you're doing, you can also take things that aren't mono and make them mono. You can mix the multiple channels together. I'm going to close Audacity now, but basically the point I'm getting to is that a lot of files out there, most in fact, are stereo files. If you want to use them with positional audio, you have to double check to see that they are either mono or that you can make them mono using Audacity or some other tool or converter available online.
Would you mind tossing in one of those mono files in Slack just so that?
Sure. So this file is accessible in the audio zip file that I put up earlier, but for convenience, I'm going to give you guys just this one file.
I missed that. Sorry.
It's okay. I think it is easier. Just if you didn't pick it up before, you don't have to go find that previously and go dig in the folder. Here's just the one file, shimmer.wave. And so this particular one isn't going to be great and as ambience. It's not like birds chirping in the wilderness. This one is just sort of this shimmering, shiny kind of sound. It'll be easier to show what it is than to end up trying to describe it. So I'm going to, in my properties here.
So Will, if you were to play that
Yes.
in Windows, would it, since it's mono, it would be both speakers per se, but then when
Yes.
it's putting it in the game, because where you place it, it does become directional?
That's right. Yep. So for my scene here, I'm going to change the source of my audio 3D. So I have it selected. I'm going to click on this folder here. So this folder button brings up the file browser, and I'm going to go select my file, which is shimmer.wave. I'm going to save my scene, and then we'll run this again. So if you listen to it right now, you don't hear the audio at all, which doesn't seem right because we just changed our audio. We had this whole spiel about how we took our stereo sound, replaced it with mono, and that was going to be important. And now we're not hearing anything. What's up with that?
I'm hearing a hiss of some kind.
Hearing a hiss of some kind.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something with your machine
Yeah,
or
I am
with-
too.
Interesting. I do not hear a hiss. Is the hiss gone? Is there still a hiss?
This is gone.
I never heard the hiss.
I did. I heard it.
Wow.
It was like a soft white noise or something, but it was definitely
Yeah,
sound.
yeah, it was
Yep,
like
yep,
just
yep, that's the
background
one.
white noise. Mhm.
Maybe you guys might actually be hearing shit. Here, I'm going to play this file in Windows. Is that kind of what it sounded like?
No.
No.
No,
No.
it was very much just white noise static
I didn't hear it on my
Oh.
end, but
underneath your funshine. You could hear both
I
of
think
them
the
at the
hiss
same
came from
time.
the Funshine music. Yeah, I think it came from there. It didn't come from the shimmering. No.
Really, I remember noticing it before.
Yeah, I didn't notice it the first time.
But I'm assuming this time you didn't set the properties why we didn't hear your chiming sound.
Yeah, so something's going on with the fact that it's inconsistent who's hearing it, and I don't hear it on my end. It might be Zoom is doing something to the sound that it's
ghost.
relaying.
It could be filtering the sound.
Might be doing something. Yeah. Either way, take my word for it that on my end, I could not hear it. That it might have been playing, but if it was playing so quietly, I couldn't really pick it up. And that's basically what I'm working to. If we look at my audio right now, my audio is set to 6 units directly to the left of my player. The position on it right now is -6, 0, -8. So what's the problem with that?
What are the coordinates again? 6, 0, negative?
Yes, right now the coordinates of the audio are at -6, 0, -8.
It's too far behind.
Right. So the problem that we're having right now is the audio is kind of far away from the listener. And importantly, how far is it away from the listener? I have it 6 units to the left of the player. How far away is it from the audio listener right now?
Six meters to the left.
That's what we would like it to be,
Yeah,
but it's actually not right now because
I think
really
8 meters
important.
behind, something like that.
Sorry, what was that, Jafar?
8 meters behind. It's more behind. It's more behind than left.
Right. With our stuff right now, I might look at my game and say it's 6 meters to the left of my player. That means it's 6 meters away from my listener. But the problem is I am assigning information to the player here that the game does not have. I consider the player to be the source that I would want my ears to be listening from, but the game does not know that. As far as the game is concerned, this is just another model. I haven't done anything to say this is where I'm listening from, and we need to adjust that in some way to make sure that you actually are listening from the player's position. Otherwise, as I move the player around, my ears are still just sort of like out in a field over at 0, 0, 0, because that's the default position. So does anyone know how we change this? And I'll give you a hint. We don't have a convenient way to do this in the editor, although it would really be much nicer if there was.
Now you're now do it in code.
And I have to do it in code. Yep.
In the key press event, when you're moving the player, you simply move the audio object with the player.
So that's one of our options. We could make it so that when we do our press key and our release key actions, then we set the position of our ears to match the position of the player. Is there a downside to doing it that way?
It would only update whenever the player moved. So if your sound was moving, it wouldn't necessarily update with your player.
I think you're on the right track. The gist of it is, when does our sound update? When we have it in the press key and release key actions.
It'll only update key or release the key.
No, I think you should set the default. If you want, let's say you want the sound to come from the left, 6 meters from the left, you should set it as the default first. And then as the player moves, either towards, you can make the player move either towards or away from the audio source. Isn't it?
The gist of the issue that we're getting at here is that we want to make it so that as the player moves closer or gets farther away, we are updating the position of the listener. We want to set our ears. The problem is we're trying to figure out where we place that code to make it happen. And like Amanda said, if we do it inside press key and release key, which is where we're controlling our movement right now, then we're only going to update our ears when we start moving and when we stop moving.
I think
All
it's
that time.
update action, isn't it? Action update.
Yes.
Where action update. So as you update, as you update the action updates, then it starts to do whatever you want it to do.
Right. So if we want to, this might seem like a little bit overkill, but basically one way we can make sure that our listener is always at the position of our player is just on every single frame of animation, just say, make sure these two things are at the same place. And would that work? Is there any downside to doing it this way?
Would you have to do something to calculate the distance between the two at every scene change?
The distance between which two?
The player and the audio source.
So
if you want the audio source.
The distance between the audio source and the listener, that one we don't have to worry about, or the player for that matter, because That's what this positional audio system is going to do for us. It's going to automatically figure out, hey, you're this far away. This is the volume and the direction you should get it from. But we do need to make sure that our ears, the audio listener, is in the right place. So long as we can put that in the right place and the audio is in the right place, all the distance part will be taken care of for us.
I'm having trouble selecting, like I accidentally put down a sound object and I'm hitting enter and I'm tabbing around, but I still can't find it.
It should be just like any other object in terms of if you move your cursor on top of it and select, you might need to tab around to reach it, but there's nothing special about how the Audio 3D works in that capacity. You can also, if you need to select it via the scene tree, it does appear in the scene tree like other items.
Oh, okay.
So you could select it that way.
Okay.
But for right now, let's go ahead and let's use the update. Basically, the idea behind this is we're going to just always make sure that our Audio 3D and our player, or sorry, not our Audio 3D, the listener, the ears that the audio system uses, we want to keep these in sync with the player. By putting this in the update loop, it's going to change its value on every single frame, even if those values haven't changed. But that's okay. It won't hurt anything to set the same values on top of existing values repeatedly. It will still do what we need it to do, and it won't like hurt the computer or anything to tell it, please put these values in again. And our computer isn't going to like slow down a whole bunch because we've asked this, because this is a really small thing we're asking the computer to do. It can do much stronger, beefier computations than this. So it's going to be okay if we do it this way. So that just asks the question, how do I actually do that? Does anyone know what I need to do to set the audio listener's position? What does that code look like?
Whatever was the name of the object of your listener, set position 3D. And I think in the player, you have similar stuff. Set X, get position 3D.
Yep.
Could just dump it there as like a vector, and that should be done.
So,
sorry, really quick, Daniel, if you can hear, Tim Cluthy's in breakout room 1. I've assigned you, but you have to click on it in order to go. So.
Yeah, as far as setting the listener position goes, that feels entirely intuitive, right? That's how we set the position of everything else. So why wouldn't we just do it the same way with the listener? The listener is a little funky though, and part of this is just historical. This audio,
because you hate us.
Well, I love all of you. I just like to challenge you at times. The audio is a little bit funky in the way that you set the listener, and this is partially due to historical reasons with how this was made and at what point during the engine it was made. This was made before we had kind of figured out how we were doing all of the rest of the system. And so the way that you do this is basically, in my class right now, I already have this variable here, audio music. And I also have another audio here, audio potion audio. I'm going to use one of these, and it's not going to be very intuitive why I need to do it this way, and I'll explain as I go. I'm going to say potion audio. I could do either of them. I'm going to select arbitrarily potion audio, set listener. And then if I look in code completion, I have a bunch of options here. I have set listener direction, set listener position, let's set listener up, set listener velocity. Why is this stuff in the individual audio object? I'm going to say potion audio set listener position, and I'm going to give it some values. To start off with, it's just 0, 0, 0. I need to change these to something else. But right now, why on earth is this code here? Potion audio set listener position 0, 0, 0.
No, it's an audio object, right? You have to position it. Like if you want the portion, so for example, if you want something to happen, you want the portion sound played, you would need to position the portion audio with the potion.
Right. That seems like an entirely reasonable thing that I would want to do. And I can do that, but that's not what this code does. Because if I'm going to write another line of code here. Potion audio : set position 0, 0, 0. So now I have two lines.
On. This is there in the documentation. I think this is determining the position of the audio with respect to something.
Basically, when I'm thinking about my 3D audio or my spatial audio, there are two things I have to consider when it comes to any sound. I have the position of the sound in space. There's a tree that is located 2 units to my left and 1 unit forward. It is at 201, right? That is the source of the sound. But I also need to consider where I am. Where are my ears in space? Where am I listening to things from? That's the listener's position. If I am located at 0, 0, 0, I will hear that tree that is 2 units and 1 ahead of me at 201. I will hear it mostly through my left ear because it's on my left side. But if I take my ears and my entire body and I just sort of take a few steps over to the left, I go over until I'm 4 units to the left with a jaunty arm swinging motion full of life and vim and vigor. And now the tree is still at 201, but I am at 400. Is the tree on my left or my right now?
On your right.
It's on my right now because I've moved past it. Now, if that tree has some audio coming from it, there's squirrels or birds or whatever, or the tree just, is talking to me because it's like an ent or something. We stepped into Lord of the Rings. I'm hearing it through my right ear now. What that means is even though the audio hasn't moved at all, relatively, it is coming through a different way in my speakers because of my position. That's the difference between set position and set listener position. But the thing that go ahead.
So you do set listener position, parentheses get, player get X, player get Y, player get Z.
Yep, and that's what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to be doing potion audio : set listener position. And instead of 0, 0, 0, what we want here is player : get X, player : get Y, player : get Z. We're going to make it so that the listener, the ears, are always located where the player is. The one thing that I wanted to emphasize here, though, as well, is just that I have done this with the potion audio variable. I'm going to remove this other line up above where I did set position. That one sets the position of the audio itself, but I already have that located somewhere, and I don't feel like changing that one. I'm going to say music : set listener position. I'm going to spell it right too, I swear. And then I'm going to give that some value. I'm going to say 10, 10, and 10. Arbitrary numbers that I'm giving just for example here. But now I have music : set listener position, potion audio : set listener position. I have just set the listener position with 2 different objects. When this code runs, where are my ears? And why does it matter, or does it matter, that I've run it from 2 different objects?
Your ears are in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yes.
So
thank you for your insight.
Your ears for the potion audio are on the character, but the music is going to come, look like it's from 10, 10, 10, or sound like.
That right there feels like the obvious intuitive thing it should do. That's totally what this seems like it should be doing, right?
Confused dog head tilt.
Yes.
That's what you're getting.
This is why I
right
wanted
now.
to bring it up, though, because this does not make sense. When you say music : set listener position, there is one listener. This gets the one listener that exists somewhere in the world, all one set of your ears, and puts it at 10, 10, 10. When the potion audio sets listener position right after, it takes the same set of ears and it moves that set of ears to the new position, the position where the player is. For Pranav, because I remember you mentioned static variables before, it's basically setting a static variable somewhere.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know what static variables are, basically all that you need to understand is there's only ever one set of ears. Any audio object can go say, hey, I'm going to go grab the one set of ears and do something with it, but it's always the same set of ears. If you change it with any audio object, it has the same result. There are one set of ears that are getting positioned, that are being turned around if you're setting its direction. There's only one listener that we need to, or that we can modify. Does that make sense? I know it's not intuitive.
We don't need
You can have only one listener. You can only have
if
one
it's
listener.
a general sound like background music.
Yeah.
We don't need to do this, right? Like we don't need to set the listener position, do we?
So that's a good question. If I have general audio, one thing that I want to call attention to here is potion audio, music, these two things that I'm setting values on. I showed you that with potion audio, I could call set position on it, right? Is the potion audio an audio 3D? I'm going to scroll up to my variables. Potion audio is not an audio 3D.
No, yeah.
It's just an audio object. So what's up with that? Why can't I set the position on that?
Because it's not 3D. How are you going to set it in the 3D world?
The audio class allows me to set 3D positions on stuff because the base audio class supports 3D audio, not in the sense that it's used in the game world, because I can't put audio into the game world in the same way. But I could do 3D positioning if I had surround sound speakers. And I can set the listener as if I had surround sound speakers. This audio system used to exist with no game engine at all. And you could use the audio engine with no game engine at all. The only difference between an audio and an audio 3D is that the audio 3D knows that the game engine exists and will do some extra stuff for you automatically that makes it convenient to use with the game engine. If I have my audio 3D object and I put it in the game world and I start moving it around, it'll automatically calculate Doppler and whatnot for me, which the normal audio class couldn't do because it doesn't know that the game engine exists. That's basically the difference. But because of that, what we're going to find here is I have now in my update, I'm removing the line that says music set listener position. We just want the potion audio one. We're setting the listener position to player get X, player get Y, player get Z. If I go and run this now, I hopefully am not going to get some hissing sound, but we'll see on that one. First off, do you guys hear hissing and do you guys hear the shimmering sound?
Yeah, I hear the shimmering sound, yes.
Okay, great.
Shimmer, no hiss.
On the left. On the left.
Right, on the left. Hey, great. I actually wasn't sure if Zoom was going to retain my directional audio here. So the shimmer's to the left. If I move to the left now, you can sort of hear.
Clearer now. It's clearer.
It's getting clearer. I'm getting closer to it.
It's kind of panning.
Yeah, at this point, I'm standing roughly on top of it now. So I'm hearing it more in both ears. I'm going to go ahead and close my game now. Andrew asks, is there a way to add character rotation to this as well? So it depends on which way you're facing. The answer is yes. You can choose which direction your character is facing, or the which way the listener is facing as well. Does anyone know what that would look like? I'll give a hint.
Listener. Set listener.
Set listener.
X, Y, Z.
Can
So
you
right
do
now,
yaw, pitch, and roll with listener with the sounds?
You can't, unfortunately, although that would be
okay.
convenient if you could. But you could do something similar. So I'm going to do potion audio : set listener direction.
Direction.
And I have three values here: X, Y, and Z. What do these mean in this context?
Left, right, and Or is it backwards, forwards, and behind?
No, I don't know anymore.
Basically,
Shut up.
There's about a billion different ways that you're going to interact with X, Y, and Z, and about a billion different things that none of them look the same, and they're all just a little bit different. And it's okay to not know all of the answers immediately. But the way that this one works is it takes a vector. We were talking about this before. Basically, when you say set listener direction, you're giving it a direction to look at, basically. So you can kind of imagine that if I'm standing at 0, 0, 0, and then I say I want to look at the space positioned at the tree, I'm going to look at 2 to the left on the ground, so 0 for the Y, and 1 forward, so 2, 0, 1. I can kind of imagine that I am just sort of standing at 0, 0, 0. I know that there's a point 2, 0, 1 out there. I just put my arm out and I just kind of rotate myself until my arm is pointing directly at that space. I'm going to look at that position when I say set listener direction. And if I say 0, 0, 0 as convenience, but no matter where you're at, that's always how it works. If I say set listener direction 2, 0, 1, I'm going to put my arm out. I'm going to move it 2 units over to the left and 1 forward. And I'm just pointing in that direction now.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think yeah, it does.
Okay. All right. So, this was the 3D audio session. This was only an hour long, so we're basically reaching up at the end of the session now. There are more things that we can dig into with the 3D audio, but that's the meat of it. So are there any other questions regarding how this works before we go to our break and then we yield to Amanda?
Can we make a 3D audio cursor for the scene editor?
A 3D audio cursor for the scene editor. I'm not sure I follow what you mean.
What I mean is, for me, I'm having a hard time working with coordinates. Okay. It's a pain doing all the math. Now, just like you've made the game and you have the panning of different things, what I'm thinking is if I grab an object from the palette and I bring it, when I hit the first enter key to place it, I get into this environment where I have a basic noise which tells me where I am. And then I can move around and collide with objects, or maybe get a full sort of panoramic view of the object so that I know what else I've placed where. And maybe just a bong sound for each object. So then let's say I hear a bong to my left and I know that I want something on top of whatever that object is. I can scroll to that object, hit the enter key once again, drop the object on top of that, and I'm sorted.
Yeah, I know that this is our sort of first attempt at blind accessible 3D scene editing, so we're absolutely interested in suggestions. So basically you're kind of thinking like having like almost like a radar ping to try and like directionally locate certain kinds of objects around you. Is that right?
Something like that. I mean, because like I've dropped stuff onto my scene, I've dropped so many things, but where are they? Now I will need the coordinates for fine-grained positioning. That's fine. Let them be there.
Yeah.
But maybe it's I'm thinking aloud. I don't know, but it is a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly it would need to be, but I understand what you're going for. Some ability to try and sort of get a sense of what's around you, what the state of the scene is, without having to manually bump into each thing, and using the 3D sound system maybe to provide some of that context.
Has anyone played Lone Wolf?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
It's
I played Lone Wolf,
you played it, right?
Game. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you remember when you're in the submarine, how you get that panoramic sonar thing?
I think you.
All around the submarine, right? Right around.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So the sonar will tell you like when you are getting nearer, it will beep faster, that kind of thing. When you're getting nearer to an object, or is it? I forgot. I played it long time ago.
Yeah. So what it does, if let's say you have a sandbar on the rear part of the submarine. So it scans, it goes a little bonk, it stops, and then you know that there's something there, and then it resumes. So could be an interesting way to visualize the scene editor.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to. I don't know the particular example, but I know enough to go find it now. So that's interesting.
Yep. GMA games, it will probably run on a very old computer.
GMA games, you said?
Yep.
I'll keep a note for myself for that.